on this, and I'm happy to see it because this is an interesting, very interesting teaching. So we're just going to continue reading along here and see what we can come up with. So the last time we ended 321-2, the judgment of the nations. So Isaiah chapter 34 documents the judgment of the nations. Isaiah heavily uses elements of Yom Kippur in his description. In the first two verses, Yahweh calls all the nations to him and declares his indignation is on all of them. In verse 5, Yahweh states that his sword shall come down on Idumea and on the people of my curse to judgment. Thus, Idumea, or this is an example of Edom, is emblematic of all the enemy nations of Israel in the end times and the wicked who shall be judged on Yom Kippur. Isaiah uses Idumea to symbolize the wicked because Idumea was a sister nation to Israel, but it hated Israel more than the other nation. Throughout all its history, Idumea was in bitter rivalry against Israel. As we shall see, this rivalry mirrors between Lilith and Isha being Eve, and the general rivalry between the Sota and the innocent woman of the bitter water trial. Verse 6 makes an important declaration. It declares that Yahweh's sword, in verse 5, shall take up two types of sacrifice. This is each in keeping with the elements of the Yom Kippur ceremony. The first sacrifice, that of Bozrah, is Messiah, as corresponds to the goat to Yahweh on Yom Kippur. We use Yahweh instead of Jehovah because it's closer in our understanding of Hebrew. This is why we use Yahweh. Or Yahuwah is a second contender. The second sacrifice, the great slaughter in Idumea, corresponds to the rejected sacrifice of Yom Kippur, the goat to Azazel. So this is in Isaiah 34:6. The sword of Yahweh is filled with blood. It is made fat with fatness, and with the blood of lambs and goats, with the fat of the kidneys of rams. For Yahweh has a sacrifice in Bozrah and a great slaughter in the land of Idumea. It is generally acknowledged that the sacrifice in Bozrah in verse 6 is in reference to Messiah. Bozrah means sheep pen. Isaiah chapter 63 reveals that Messiah came from Bozrah to his people. Israel in power and glory. His clothes are stained red with blood like one who treads the wine presses. He alone bore his burden of the winepress. This blood is his own shed blood. It refers to his redemptive act upon Golgotha. Thus, the sacrifice in Bozrah in verse 6 refers to the accepted sacrifice of Yahweh. This is mirrored in the goat to Yahweh on Yom Kippur that achieves atonement for all Israel. It is the same accepted sacrifice for the innocent woman of the bitter water trial. The slaughter in Idumea is the rejected sacrifice of the iniquitous on Yom Kippur. It is the goat to Azazel sent out in the wilderness, bearing all the sins of the world. Thus is the same rejected sacrifice of the defiled Sota in the bitter water trial. It is telling that in Isaiah's judgment, Lilith abides in Idumea. This links her to the judgment of Azazel on Yom Kippur and indicates that she is the mother of Azazel. So really, the entire Yom Kippur ceremony is such that it is not only symbolic for the sins of Israel being transferred and transferred off of Israel and on to the scapegoat, but it also testifies to a heavenly battle between the generations of the earth and the generations of heaven. Generations of heaven in the little understanding, in the theory, is essentially suggesting that these are the fallen angels. These are not the fallen angels, but they are the offspring of fallen angels with Lilith. And if you want to read more about that, the book of Enoch talks about that and so on. Okay, so basically in verse 9, Isaiah details the cursing of the land of Idumea in its day of judgment. Its streams shall be turned into rivers of molten tar, its dust transformed into brimstone, and the land itself shall become burning pitch. The prophet declares that the smoking fires of the land shall never be quenched. This mirrors the curses of the Sota and the bitter water trial. Verses 11 through 13 reveal that Idumea shall become desolate and the habitation of various demons and creatures. In verse 14, Lilith is the last of these mentioned demons. Unfortunately, one will not see the name Lilith in the King James Version translation. The King James renders Lilith, Strong's 3917, as screech owl. This is now commonly recognized as an error. The ASV acknowledges that Lilith refers to a night monster. The Genesius lexicon likewise identifies it as a nocturnal specter, and Strong states that Lilith is the proper name of a night demon. All of these sources recognize that the passage refers to the demon Lilith, who are traditionally described as a night hag and succubus. Now, there's quite a bit of detail on the succubus. That even goes into things like mythology revolving around vampires and so on. All of that is part of the kingdom of darkness. Lilith has a very special and prominent role in Isaiah 34. She appears at the crux of Yahweh's eternal judgment between Idumea and Israel. Isaiah gives her much more attention than any other demon in the chapter, whereas other demons and creatures in Isaiah 34 are just listed with little or no elaboration. Now, some of these were like hybrids. They were like goat legs, and they like sarters, and there was all these different creatures mentioned. Isaiah, the book of Enoch tends to go into some of this as well. Okay, thank you, Brother Steve. Good to see you here. Okay, so Lilith is described in detail for full 4 verses. This is 14 to 17. Furthermore, she is rivaled by a female counterpart called Isha. That would be, Isha literally means the woman, and that would be of Adam. In other words, she was taken from Adam, literally taken from him genetically and created. A little lower than Adam. She was on a lower tier of creation. But in Messiah, women have been elevated spiritually, the same spiritual authority. Furthermore, she is rivaled by a female counterpart named Isha. Okay, so who dwells alongside Lilith. Isaiah declares that through a mystery of Yahweh's word, Isha shall not remain in Idumea with Lilith on the day of judgment. Rather, she shall be redeemed. She shall be redeemed from that place and inherit the Messianic kingdom. As we shall see, Isha is emblematic of Eve and her struggle against the serpent Lilith. As such, she represents innocent Israel on Yom Kippur and the innocent woman of the Soda trial. The serpent Lilith is emblematic of Idumea, the damned of Yom Kippur, which would be, of course, when the high priest would place his hands upon the scapegoat, he would say Azazel, which would be the progeny of Lilith and Samael, one of the fallen angels. I think if we explained that before, within the Lilith understanding, the Lilith theory. Remember, these are theories we're talking about and just trying to piece pieces together. As always, eat the hay, spit out the straw. All right, so Isha dwells in the curses of Idumea for a time because she is sinful and observant of it by Yahweh's standard. In other words, this is part of the curse when Eve and Adam fell. Remember, her childbearing became greatly painful, and Adam had to till the soil. That was part of his curse, and work by the sweat of his back to eat his bread. Nevertheless, she shall be redeemed in that day of judgment. Lilith shall not, but shall remain in the land of cursing. Verse 17 records the final judgment. There, Yahweh casts lots, and the eternal fate of the inhabitants of Idumea and Israel are determined. Idumea becomes the hellish abode of Lilith and her companions forever and ever. However, Isha shall no longer be the neighbor counterpart of Lilith. Her lot is with Israel. This blessed fate is described beginning in the next passage, which starts chapter 35. There, the revival of the land of Israel is described. It states, Yahweh will come and save his people. The wilderness and the desert shall be glad for them that remain, and the plain shall rejoice and blossom as a rose. The blind shall see and the deaf shall hear. Streams of fresh water will break out in the wilderness of the desert. Lakes and pools shall form in the parched ground, and reptiles will dwell there amongst the reeds and rushes. In addition, a highway of holiness shall be built and the unclean shall not pass over. Sorrow shall depart from the land. The people shall see Elohim. It is the Messianic era, or as we understand, the Atid Lavo. Okay, so all of this will happen when Messiah comes back. Not only will he subject the nations to his control, but he's going to have a final reckoning with these demonic forces. Satan will be cast into the lake of fire. Lilith will be cast into the lake of fire with him. All demons will be cast in the lake of fire with him. And those who are wicked will be cast into the lake of fire. And so that's the final judgment that this is talking about. Okay, so 321:3, Isaiah's discussion of Lilith. Isaiah, a relatively lengthy discussion of Lilith, comes in verse 14 through 13. Unfortunately, the King James translation of the passage is quite muddled. Its rendition paints rather tranquil setting where various animals take shelter in the ruins of the desolate land of Idumea. Undoubtedly, now it's interesting, Idumea, if you look that up, isn't that I think that's Lot's descendants. I think, yeah, okay. Maybe I'm wrong about that. You look that up. It could be a form of Edom, which is Esau. But I was thinking maybe there's a connection there because, you know, Lot had an improper sexual relationship with his daughters. The daughters got him drunk and tricked him. So I was looking to see if there was a connection there because it just kind of came up in my mind. But let's move on here. Let's see here. The literal meaning of what is written is simply too facile to believe at face value, and the symbolism needed to understand the passage is obtuse. The King James translation is provided below. Okay, so here, this is Isaiah 34:14 through 17. The wild beast of the desert shall also meet with the wild beast of the island and the satyr. Now, this is one of those creatures that's mentioned in the book of Enoch. They cry to his fellow. The screech owl also shall rest there and find for herself a place of rest. There shall the great owl make her nest and lay and hatch and gather under her shadow. There shall the vultures also be gathered, every one with her mate. Seek ye out of the book of Yahweh and read, no one of these shall fail, none shall want her mate. For my mouth it hath commanded, and it's his spirit has gathered them. And he hath cast the lot for them, and his hand hath divided it into them by line. They shall possess it forever, from generation to generation shall they dwell therein. And he goes on here. I believe the best and most literal translation of the three verses is that given below. The word-by-word breakdown is given in table 3:18. This literal translation, once its symbolism is understood, yields a surprising detailed account of Lilith. Okay, so this is the literal here. The desert shall meet islands, and the kid upon his neighbor shall call out. Only there he had disturbed Lilith, because she had caught for herself a perch. Thence of her a snake had made a nest, and she shall slip away, but he had torn open, and she had covered in her shadow. Only there had been assembled flying ones. Interesting. Isha is her counterpart. Seek from upon the book of Yahweh and read it. One from them shall not remain. That could be in reference to the judgment, the lake of fire. They had not visited Isha, her counterpart, because my mouth it has commanded, and his spirit it has gathered them. Okay, so this is probably a literal taken right from the Hebrew. The first verse indicates that a kid goat encounters Lilith where the deserts meets the islands, and that this locale is a place where Lilith had found a perch. From this, we learn that Lilith's abode is the depths of the sea. Interesting. The odd phraseology of deserts meeting islands indicates that a catastrophic drought has taken place that has evaporated the oceans. Wow, I didn't even think of that. The drought, now that's similar because, you know, there is a, have you ever seen, let me see if I can get a spot on this so I don't lose my spot. All right, let me show you guys something here. Oh, good grief, we gotta, how did we do that? Okay, get rid of all that. Hide notebook. Okay, so let me show you something here. Welcome, Vicky. Welcome. Okay, let's see here. This is let me see if I can find this. Okay, there we go. Isaiah 30, 26. And I don't know why. Really, this should be. I really wish that this would give me the King James because that's the book that I know. Let's go to that one there. All right. Oh, this is restored names. All right. So that's what we need. Okay, so that's Isaiah 30, 26. No, good grief. Come on. All right, so let's go down here to 26. Okay, all right. All right, so here it is, verse 25, and there shall be upon every high mountain, upon every high hill, rivers and streams of waters in the day of the great slaughter, when the towers fall. Moreover, the light of the moon shall be as the light of the sun, and the light of the sun shall be sevenfold. So this indicates oppressive heat in the Great Tribulation. And as the light of 7 days in the day that Yahweh binds up the breach of his people and healeth the stroke of her womb. So it's in all of this. It's in all of this that Yahweh, during the tribulation, that Yahweh will heal up the breach of his people. The Jews and the house of Israel will be brought together, right? Behold, the name of Yahweh comes from afar, burning with great anger, and the burden thereof is heavy. His lips are full of indignation, his tongue as a devouring fire. So it says here, in his breath as an overflowing stream. This is a hot breath, by the way. Shall reach to the midst of the neck, to the sip the nations with the sieve of vanity, and there shall be a bridle on the jaws of the people, causing them to err. All right, so this is interesting because we're talking about how this scripture in Isaiah. Yes, and that's right. That's in accordance with Ezekiel 37, Vicky. Yeshua is the repairer of the breach. Ezekiel 37, I think, mentions that. He shall heal up the breach. Well, what is that breach? It's the breach between the house of Judah and the house of Israel. That's the breach. And they will be one people united in his hand. Okay, let's see here. Let me now that I'm thinking about that, let's go to Ezekiel 37. We'll talk about that. Let's see, Jeremiah. Okay, so let's see if I can find this. So this is the two sticks prophecy. So I prophesied as he commanded me, the breath came into me, and they lived and stood upon their feet, an exceeding great army. Then he said to me, son of man, these bones are the whole house of Israel. Remember, the house of Israel was carried away, but the literal physical identity of the house of Israel will be manifest in the latter day. They said, behold, they say our bones are dried, our hope is lost, we are cut off from our parts. Therefore I prophesy, say to them, and if you read down through here, he puts the stick of Ephraim and he joins them. So here's one stick for Joseph, the stick of Ephraim, and for all the house of Israel, his companions. That has to do with all the Gentiles. And join them one to another to one stick, and they should become one in his hand. So he's going to be joining this for Judah. The one stick is going to be Judah, and for Israel and the shul of Israel, his companions. Then he'll take another stick and he'll bring them together. Now, and I think this is the one where it talks about he shall heal up the breach. And so Messiah is the healer of the breach. You're right about that. All right, so the drought causes the deserts and islands to expand such that they extend into the ocean and meet in the former depths of the sea. The notion that this phraseology indicates a catastrophic drought is also supported by the use of the same phrase in Jeremiah 50:39. Let's take a look at that one. Jeremiah 50:39. Yeah. Doesn't like me to just put, it doesn't like me just to copy. All right, let's go to entire thing. Therefore, the wild beasts of the desert with the wild beasts of the island shall dwell there, and the owls shall dwell there, and there shall be no more inhabited forever, neither shall be dwelled in from generation to generation. Is that where we're supposed to go? 50:39? Yeah. There, the cause of the deserts meeting the islands is linked to a severe drought upon the waters. Interesting. All right, so here is this in Hebrew. Okay, verse 14 relates that the kid he-goat calls out to his counterpart only to disturb Lilith. Some explain that the kid he-goat perhaps refers to a demonically possessed goat, but I think that it is in reference to a one of these fallen angels potentially, or a Nephilim. Could be. I know that these creatures are described in the book of Enoch, part of the kingdom of darkness. This is certainly in keeping with the demon-filled nature of the land. I hold there are two levels of interpretation. The surface interpretation is that kid goat is calling for his lost mate or mother. It could be, maybe it's Azazel, could be in reference to Azazel. This indicates that he was alone and unprotected, exactly the type of child prey upon which Lilith of legend is said to feed. However, there's a deeper interpretation. The kid goat could represent the supernaturally animated seed of adultery in the bitter water trial, and also the goat sent to Azazel on Yom Kippur. That's what I was getting that idea myself. In terms of the bitter water trial, the kid goat is the seed of adultery that calls out to his counterpart, hoping to find the promised seed of the innocent woman who shall bear his curses for him. However, instead of finding his saved counterpart, he discovers the slain spirit of Lilith and perishes. Likewise, the kid goat could represent the goat sent to Azazel on Yom Kippur, who dies by the curse of Lilith. All right, now this is interesting. Verse 14 also demonstrates the bird-like characteristics of Lilith. The Hebrew word for had made a nest and perch are both words normally used in describing birds. Now, let me show you guys something here. I want to show you this creature is interesting because it let me see if I can get some images. Now, this is the one that showed up in New York, but this right here. Okay, there we go. This is what I'm looking for. So I don't know how I lost that. Let's try this one. There we go. All right, that's what we need. I think you guys should be able to see that. See if I can get this bigger. Okay, so this is a perfect example of what Lilith was imagined as in the, now notice the in the typology here, we've got owl, screech owl. Notice that. Interesting. And look at this here. We've got these I don't know, what are those, lions? But look, they've got wings on them. Look at the wings. Isn't that something? So this is, and notice that she's got this, okay, these wings. And so this very well may be a picture of Lilith in ancient mythology. Yeah, isn't that something, Steve? Okay. All right, so well, basically, let's see where we are here. I think I stopped here. Verse 14 also demonstrates the bird-like characteristics of Lilith. The Hebrew word for had made a nest and perch are both words normally used in describing birds. Now, I should mention that in the Zohar, it suggests that Lilith, she sprouted wings and she flew away from Adam and she decided to shack up with Samael, one of the fallen, one of the 200 fallen angels that came down to Mount Hermon, as spoken of in the Ethiopian book of Enoch. Interesting. Also, there is a popular movie that shows Lilith, literally, and they picture her just like that. She's able to transform into a human woman, but when she's in her full self, she sprouts wings and she has claws and she turns into a demonic monster. This is a horror movie that's recently, and I was just struck by all of the symbolism in all of this. Yeah, that would be like on some birds, that's like a spike that comes out on some birds. It's used like chickens have that spike, Vicky, for defensive purposes. You can actually die if that spike were to, when chickens attack, say like a rooster, people have died from chickens because that spike gets into their jugular. It can, when they're flailing their legs around. It is also demonstrated by the word for she had covered in her shadow, which implies the bird's mothery brooding over her young. The word's only other use in the Bible comes in Jeremiah 17:11. There it is used to describe how a bird sits over, broods over her eggs. Hence it implies a mother brooding over. Let's take a look at that real quick here. Jeremiah 17:11. Okay, so and as the partridge sitteth on eggs and hatcheth them not, so he that getteth riches and not by right shall leave them in the midst of his days, and at his end shall be a fool. Now notice this previously says, the heart is deceitful above all things, desperately wicked, who could know it? I, Yahweh, search the heart, I try the reins, even to give every man according to his ways and according to the fruit of his doings, as the partridge sitteth on eggs. And I wonder what the Hebrew is for that. Let's take a look at the Hebrew real quick. Jeremiah 17:11. Look at the Hebrew. All right, so it's using koreh. Okay, interesting. As a partridge, koreh. Okay. Take a look at that one more time here. That, you know what? That comes from kara, to call. And that could have reference to the scream that reputedly Lilith had. Because that's the same 3 letters that are used in, which means to call out. See if we can get. All right, I'll get back here. Okay, so continue on. Verse 15 reveals that a snake had made a nest in the place where Lilith abides. The making of a nest with Lilith implies that they had formed a union for the purpose of raising seed together. That snake probably refers to Nachash, which is a demon. And that demon reputedly is Samael, one of the 200 that came down upon Mount Hermon. Just as rabbis teach that Leviathan referred to the spirit of Lilith fused with Samael, and the dragon referred to her body, so too here in Isaiah 34, the snake refers to her body and the winged Lilith refers to her spirit. Thus, the physical body of the snake had made a nest for the spirit of Lilith. Interesting. The middle part of verse 15 requires care to understand. It consists of three major verb actions performed by Lilith. The first verb is in the present or future tense and indicates that Lilith will slip away. This could be a poetic allusion at her escape from the garden and her nature at the fleeing serpent before Yahweh. The next two verbs are in the past tense and must indicate action she had performed before slipping away. The first indicates that she, quote, she had torn open. The second indicates that she had covered in her shadow. As we have seen, this second word indicates a motherly brooding over, like a bird sitting upon her nest. And that, what is she brooding over? Well, she's brooding over demons. Demons are in the Lilith understanding, demons are the progeny of Lilith and Samael, a fallen angel. I hold that the first verb is her response to the first mentioned creature, the kid who disturbed her. The second verb is her response to the second mentioned creature, the snake who nestled with her. She tore open the kid goat who had disturbed her, and she covered her brood over the younglings of this nest the snake had made with her. There is a mystery to be learned from the word Isaiah selected to relate that Lilith had torn open. The word is from the verb root baka, and literally translates, but she had torn open. The King James Version translates the word as enhatched, but that really cannot be the understanding of the verb. Baka is used 51 times in the Bible, and every time the King James Version translated as some form of to break open or to tear open. The only exception being here is Isaiah 34, and once again in Isaiah 59:5, where baka is once more rendered hatch. However, I hold that even in that passage, it would best be rendered as break open. It should be understood to say that iniquitous schemers break open cockatrice eggs, and that whoever eats them dies. That baka should be rendered break open as demonstrated later in the same verse. It explains why the people who eat their eggs die. It is vipers that baka break out from this crushing. All right, so this is in Isaiah 59:5. They hatch baka, cockatrice eggs, and weave the spider's web. He that eateth of their eggs dieth, and that which is crushed breaketh baka out into a viper. Interesting. Isaiah 59 brings to light an important teaching of Isaiah that seems to come into play in chapter 34 concerning Lilith. In chapter 59, cockatrice eggs of the iniquitous supernaturally give rise to vipers. Now, vipers could be, we're talking about spiritual matters here. It could be demons talking about here. The hatchlings are not in the image of its supposed parent. Likewise, in chapter 34, there is an intriguing possibility that the snake's eggs give rise to flying ones. Now, do you remember in the Torah, when it talked about the children of Israel that were, the children of Israel were traveling in the wilderness for 40 years, there was an incident where flying serpents were sent to harm the people and to bite them and to harm them. This could have been a satanic attack. It may not have been some creature that, although there is in certain kinds of thoughts where there is this unknown snake that has wings that flies and it's venomous. There's teaching about that. This could have been a supernatural judgment upon Israel. Let me see if I can call that up here real quick. Get rid of my. All right, let's see if we can find another place here. All right, let's see here. Book of Isaiah is mentioned. Okay, where is this at? There we go. Numbers 21:6. Let's take a look at that. All right, and when King Arad the Canaanite, who dwelt in the south, heard tell that Israel came by way of the spies, then he fought against Israel, took some of them prisoners, and Israel vowed a vow unto Yahweh and said, if you will indeed deliver this people into my hand, then I will utterly destroy their cities. Yahweh hearkened to the voice of Israel and delivered up the Canaanites, and they utterly destroyed them and their cities. Called the name of the place Hormah, and they journeyed from Mount Hor by the way of the Red Sea to compass the land of Edom. And the soul of the people was much discouraged because of the way. And the people spoke against Elohim and against Moses. Wherefore have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no bread, neither is there any water. Our soul loath this light bread. And they're talking about manna, so they're complaining against God's provision. And Yahweh sent fiery serpents. Now, if you look at this in Hebrew, it talks about flying serpents. It uses this term that is connected to a flying creature, okay, among the people, and they bit the people, and much people of Israel died. So that's very interesting. And therefore the people came to Moses, said, we have sinned, for we have spoken against Yahweh. So let me take a look at that one. Numbers 21, verse 6. All right, so notice it uses this Nachashim, Nachash. Notice this Nachash here. This is the same that's used for a devil, a demon, some kind of demonic creature. Hashim. Let's take a look at the, there it is, Nachash, a serpent. Okay, you look at these here, these different ones, the way it's used. Notice it's the same in, now the serpent was more crafty. It uses Nachash. Look at that. Nachash. Okay. All right, any thoughts before we move on here? Let's see here. Let's see, where did I think I left off here. 3:21:4, Lilith the flying ones. Verse 15 states that after Lilith had torn apart the kid goat and had covered the snake's nest in her shadow, only there had been assembled diot, flying ones. What are these winged creatures? The word diot is translated as vultures by the King James Version, but it literally means flying ones. And it's Nakash, remember? No one really knows to what diot refers. The American Standard Version renders as kites. Genesius is uncommitted, saying only that it only refers to some type of bird of prey. However, it does suggest it may indicate falcons or kites. The ILB goes with hawks. The problem with identifying the creatures arises because diot is used nowhere else in the Bible. Interesting. And the singular root from which it is derived is used but once in Deuteronomy 14:13. There, it apparently refers to an unclean bird. However, it is not entirely clear that diot refers to birds in Isaiah 34. The root meaning to fly, from which the word is derived, is apparently used in the names of two different kinds of birds in the Bible. It might be used to generate a name denoting any flying creature. It is certainly a possibility that Diot should be understood as a vulture or some type of bird of prey. Verse 15 could be understood as saying that the vultures were gathered around the carcass of the slain kid goat. Even more likely is that the passage is relating that the vultures were gathered around the failed brood of Lilith and the snake. This is indicated by the phrase only there in verse 15. Now, you remember that scripture in Revelation? It talks about the vultures gathering. That's one of these apocalyptic scriptures that talks about the vultures gathering. It implies that actually, I think it's in Matthew 24 too, this very cryptic stuff that's being talked about. So let's see where how does that go? Let me see if I can, let me mark this here. Let me see if I can find that for you guys. This really does not make it easy for me to let's see, what was that Messiah said? That was in, I think that's in Matthew 24. Okay, see, it's something that Messiah said. I really hate to use Google, but sometimes I just have to get Google.
Is it Matthew 6?
Let's see here. Matthew
25 through 34, is that what you're looking for?
Matthew 24:28.
Oh, okay.
Matthew 24:28 and Luke 17:37. Matthew 24. Okay, so I know it was in Matthew 24. I just didn't know what verse. Or wheresoever the carcass is, there will be the eagles be gathered together. Now it uses eagles. This is a bad translation. It really is a bird of, it's like a carrion bird. Immediately after the tribulation of those days. So in other words, he's saying that all of the powers of darkness are going to gather together. Behold, I have told you before, wherefore I say unto you, behold, he is in the desert. Go not forth. Remember that it could be very well be the anti-Messiah will come out of the desert and he will be the 12th Mahdi, which all of Islam is looking for. Behold, he is in the secret chamber. Now the teaching of the New Age religion teaches that the Christ will be illuminated and revealed from the inner chamber, kind of like a very deep, what do you call? This is occultic understanding that connects to the pyramids in ancient times. You know, if you look at all of the pantheon of gods of Egypt, they would talk about that a lot of these secret incantations were done in secret chambers. And the Maitreya, they call it the Maitreya in the New Age religion. If you want to read more about that, you can read the Aquarian conspiracy. There's a book out there that talks about that. All right, so he says, believe it or not, for the lightning cometh out of the east and shineth unto the west. That sounds like the coming of Messiah, doesn't it? So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For wherever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered. Now, this carcass could refer to this is all connected somehow. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of heaven shall be shaken. Okay, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. So this Lilith situation has connection in some way to the end times. She features prominently in the end times. Okay, so this is indicated by the phrase only there in verse 15. It implies the outcome of Lilith's nest with the snake went contrary to her intentions. Just as the kid goat had called to its neighbor, only there, he disturbed Lilith. So too Lilith brooded over her nest only there, assembled the flying ones or vultures ready to dine on her dead seed. How do we get rid of this here? I guess there may be an even deeper mystery indicated by the flying ones assembled at Lilith's nest. Instead of Diot referring to birds feasting on her dead seed, perhaps the Diot are the snake and Lilith's failed seed. I hold only the intriguing possibility that the flying ones surrounding Lilith could be a poetic reference to her innumerable seed. This is what I would think too, which are taught by certain rabbis to be forever flying around her. This would be demons. Demons flying around her. And what term does the Bible use for demons? Nachash. It uses the serpent. Okay, so according to rabbinic traditions, concerning Lilith's role as a succubus, any semen she steals with a man results in him siring supernatural illegitimate seed with her. Now, this is why sexual purity is so incredibly important. And it's also why in the Torah, if a man has an emission by mistake at night, he has a wet dream, he is unclean. He has to wash himself with water in order to cleanse that off of him. This also has implication to really birth control is frowned upon scripturally, and obviously the idea of abortion is considered a sacrifice to Lilith if you look at it scripturally. Let's see, these seed are among her 100 that die every day. However, other rabbinic tradition holds that these seed do not perish from the world until the death of the man. Abraham Saba, an early 16th century Kabbalist, writes of the strange connection between the supernatural siring of seed and a man's death. All the illegitimate children that a man has begotten with Lilith in the course of his life appear after his death to take part in the mourning for him and in his funeral. This is because all those spirits that have built their bodies from a drop of his semen regard him as their father. Now, this is just Jewish mythology here, and they are surmising. So there's nothing really scripturally to back this up. On the day of his burial, he thereby suffers punishment at their hand, and they swarm around him like bees crying, "You are our father." Go ahead, Vicky. Vicky, you should be able to speak. I got the.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. That really reminds me of the birds that Abraham shooed away. And when you just read that about, that maybe it was her flying around, and, the promise that was made to Abraham was for his seed.
Right.
Same as the way that it was expressed in the Genesis. And, because it doesn't go into a lot of detail about the birds that Abraham shooed away. So I wonder if maybe it has something to do with this, perhaps. What do you think?
Yeah, you know what? I didn't think of that connection, but remember, it talks about when he did the sacrifice, he had to shoo away the vultures.
Yeah. And then that's all it says. It doesn't go into any elaboration at all.
Right. And that's interesting. It'd be interesting to see what the Hebrew word is there that's used for vultures. Actually, we could probably look at that right now real quick here.
Yeah, because, he promises Abraham through his seed, meaning Messiah. And in the Genesis, it's the seed, you will crush his head, that. And so I wonder if that could be who that was flying around trying to mess up the covenant there.
Okay.
In some form. That's what really came into my mind. Okay.
And so this is where you're talking about. And he took unto him all these and divided them in the midst and laid each piece one against another. But the birds divided he not. And when the fowls came down upon the carcasses, Abram drove them away. Okay, so let's take a look at this fowl verb. This is in Genesis 15:11. Take a look at that. And it uses, look at that, ha'ayat, the vultures, ha'ayat. Well, that's very similar to ha'ayot, what we're looking at here, isn't it? Ha'ayit. Because that's the word they're talking about here. See, where does it go? Ha'ayot. This is in the previous. Oh, this is diot. Okay, diot. Okay, so that's what they're talking about there. Interesting. All right, so take a look at that there. It has to do with a bird of prey. What other kind of occurrences? Interesting. Okay, all right. That's an interesting thought there. I don't know what to think about that, but that's a good thought. All right, so remember, this has to do with they swarm around like bees. You are our Father. They complain and lament because they have lost their home and are now being tormented along with other demons who roam bodiless in the air. These seed contend with the man's natural born children. Wow. Seeking their shame of his their share of his inheritance. Therefore, the children of a deceased man are warned not to follow their father's corpse to the graveyard until it has been cleansed and buried, lest they fall prey to these evil spirits. Now, Saba holds that the evil seed does not harass and swarm around the man until his death, yet they complain because they have lost the physical body in which they used to dwell. That is this physical body which the swarming spirits could inhabit. I hold it is Lilith. The seed she sires dwells with her as long as the man lives. When he dies, her seed departs, and in anguish they harangue the man. Now, this is obviously, if there is any truth to this, in Messiah, this is probably why it's important to plead the blood of Yeshua against any inherited sins, because there is a process of what do you call spiritual warfare? Spiritual warfare. That's important. Okay, so could the flying ones in Isaiah 34 refer to a swarm of seeds which continually fly around Lilith like bees? I think that could be more likely. They dwell with her and die by the hundreds each day. It is an intriguing possibility. The notion is also consistent with notions of the Zohar. The Lilith clings to the seed and does not let it go until it dies. It is very possible that Saba was inspired to teach of the swarming seed based on the passages of Isaiah. Okay, very interesting. Let's see here. Let's do one more section here. Let me see if I have any comments. See here. Okay, so all right, so let's go here. 321:5, Lilith and Isha. The most provocative evidence in Isaiah identifying his Lilith as the serpent of the garden comes in the final portion of the verse 15 and the entirety of verse 16. Unfortunately, the text in question has notoriously given translators headaches. The problem for them is that Isaiah is couching a very profound statement within a bit of a riddle, and the literal Hebrew does not seem to make sense without including the riddle. Verse 15 concludes, Isha is her counterpart. Look at that. Isha is her counterpart. Isha is Eve. Verse 16 says, they had not visited Isha, her counterpart. Isha is a common word appearing 777 other times in the Bible. Look at that number. So that's Eve. It practically always means woman. However, most translators assume Isha here must be some exotic pronoun used in a clause referring to the previous flying one. I don't think that's the case. Otherwise, the passage makes little sense to them. That's not the case. No, Isha is reference to woman as in Chava, the mother of the living, which is Eve. This is the descendants of the line of Eve. The King James Version, ASV, ILB, and render the first phrase, every one of her mate, and the second, none shall want her mate. This twists the plain meaning of the words and adds a phantom preposition with that is not in the Hebrew. Even with these distortions, the sentence still does not make sense because it implies a pleasant situation for the creatures of the cursed land. The opposite must be true of the hellish abode of Idumea. Fred P. Miller, in his translation of the book of Isaiah, goes so far as to suggest a text corruption. He says concerning verse 15, if the reading in the Masoretic or received text is faithful reconstruction of Isaiah's actual words, then this is one of his most confused constructions and does not conform to his ordinary literary excellence, which at almost all times is the work of a genius. Goes on to say the Masoretic text for this verse actually defies a translation that would not be extremely clumsy without altering the word order greatly. Complicating this, in the Masoretic, the word Isha, woman, is translated none in the King James Version. Wow. I tell you what, that King James has got some problems in it, doesn't it? Basically, because they didn't understand something, they would just impute their understanding on there, you know, or they would just translate it with something else because it didn't make sense to them. There is an easy solution to the translator's problems. Read the words of Isaiah with the exact plain meaning they have always have. I hold that Isha should be understood with this nearly universal meaning of woman in the passages. Furthermore, I hold that Isaiah intended that Isha be understood as the proper name Isha, which is the name Eve bore when Yahweh cursed her and Lilith in the garden. That Isaiah intends Isha to refer to Eve and symbolically to innocent Israel is clear. In verse 16, Isaiah interrupts his narrative to warn the reader of the deep mystery he is unveiling. He understands that what he is writing may be too difficult to understand, and he wants to ensure that the reader is aware of a deep mystery. He admonishes the reader, seek from upon the book of Yahweh and read it. He then states, one from them not shall remain. Let's see, one from them not shall remain. By this, he is saying that from all the various creatures inhabiting the desolate land, he had discussed one of them shall not remain in the cursed abode. He then boldly states they had not visited Isha, her counterpart. They is an apparent reference to the flying ones assembled around Lilith. And thus, Isaiah stating that Isha shall not be visited by the flying ones as Lilith was. Interesting. So Isha is redeemed. How is she redeemed? Well, Paul may make, the book of Yahweh. That may be another book that we don't have on our canon, Vicki. Now, notice this. Notice this scripture here, the connection to this here. Let me put this. Take a look at this. Take a look at this. Okay, where's this at? Well, let's see. All right, so, but there were false prophets among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you, who privily shall bring in damnable heresies, even denying the master that bought them, and bring upon themselves swift destruction. Many shall follow their destructive ways, by reason of whom the way of truth shall be spoken evil of. And through covetousness shall they with feigned words make merchandise of you, whose judgment now the long time lingereth, and their damnation slumbereth not. For if Yahweh spared not the angels that sinned, notice he's referencing the 200 angels that came down to Mount Hermon, but cast them down to the abyss and delivered them into chains of darkness. That's where the 200 angels are right now. They're down below in the chains of darkness, to be reserved unto judgment, and spared not the old world. That's what have to do with the world before the flood, right? But saved Noah, the 8th person, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood upon the world of the wicked, and turned the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemned them with an overflow, making them an example unto them that after should live wicked, and delivered just Lot, vexed with the filthy conversation of the wicked, Let's see, what is this one that I'm looking for here? For the righteous man dwelling among them. Okay, so that might not. Chiefly them that walk in lust. Okay, so whereas angels, I don't think that's what I'm looking for here. I thought 1 Corinthians. Okay, I think what I'm looking for is 1 Corinthians. Where's this? 1 Corinthians 11. Come on now, let's bring it up. All right, so, okay, so for if the woman be not, okay, so this is where every man praying or prophesying, having his head covered, dishonoreth his head, but every woman that pray or prophesy with her head uncovered dishonoreth her head. For that is even all one as if she were shaven. For if a woman be not covered, let her also be shorn. But if it be a shame for a woman to be shorn or shaven, let her be covered. For a man indeed ought not to cover his head, for insomuch as he is the image and glory of Yahweh, but the woman is the glory of the man. So this is talking about the creative order difference. That woman came from man. For the man is not of the woman, but the woman of the man. Neither was the man created for the woman for the man. For this cause ought the woman to have power on her head because of the angels. It could, this, of course, some people have interpreted this to mean that women should wear a head covering. And I'm not, that's not the scope of this right now, but I want you to focus on this right here. Right here, because of the angels. It's not good angels. Not good angels. It's talking about fallen angels. Okay, fallen angels. That's what I'm trying to get at here with this here. These fallen angels or their offspring, see, they are not to be revolving around the woman, because if she has this sign of authority, whether that be a head covering or whether it be that she is married and under the covering, or if she's unmarried, she's under the covering of Messiah, and so on. She is protected from these demons. These flying ones would be demons, I think. Thus Isaiah stating that Esau shall not be visited by the flying ones as Lilith was. Esau's brood shall not fail, but shall live. That means her children. Now there's another, this is interesting here, because this is referenced in Peter. Oh, I get rid of this. Let's see here. Let's see if I can find this in Peter. Well, I tell you what, it does not let me do it. First Timothy, no, it's 1 Timothy 2. 1 Timothy 2. Okay, but I suffer not a woman to teach, nor usurp authority over man, but be in silence. For Adam was formed first, then Eve. And Adam was deceived, but the woman deceived was in the transgression. Notwithstanding, she shall be saved in childbearing. Interesting. That's that. Notice now you compare this with this idea here. Thus, Isaiah is stating that Esau shall not be visited by the flying ones as Lilith was. Remember, Lilith's seed was killed, 100 every day. Shall not be visited as Lilith was. Esau's brood shall not fail, but shall live. It also means that Esau shall be delivered from the cursed land of Idumea, for she shall not remain. She shall inherit Israel's promised land that shall be healed, as revealed in the following verses of chapter 35. So this is what this is referring to. Notwithstanding, she shall be saved in child. So it's through childbearing that she is saved, if they continue in faith and charity and holiness with sobriety. Now, the question is, what about a woman that is submitted under her husband and they're having relations in the proper marriage relationship and she cannot have a child? I don't think that she's prevented from the kingdom, obviously, because look at some of these great people of faith that that could not have children. But this is an interesting, I don't know how to piece this together. I'm just positing some theories here, and I don't have a absolute thing on that, but it also means that Esau shall be delivered from the cursed land of Idumea, for she shall not remain, she shall inherit, okay, Israel's promised land. Okay, so I read that. In the last half of verse 16, Isaiah clinches the import of this word. He declares that it is the truth because my mouth that is commanded from Elohim. He also declares that Esau's redemption from the land of Idumea is possible because it was by the power of Yahweh's spirit. The flying ones were gathered together. This could be interpreted in two ways. First, it could be saying that Yahweh had gathered the flying ones destined for Esau to some other location, possibly Lilith's abode. Second, it could be relating to that it was in Yahweh's power to gather the flying ones about Lilith. It was in his power to redeem Esau from such a fate. Okay, wish there was a way I could get rid of this. There we go. That's how you get rid of it. Okay, so this is where we're going to pick up next time. A lot of material there. When you notice that we're not even halfway through this book, there is so much dense, deep information here. But for those of you who are interested in this kind of stuff, I'm going to put our website here. If I could get this thing to be bigger, I sure would love that. There we go. Let's try that. From Israel, reach out to me, shul at hmisrael.com. Okay. And so you can get a hold of me with those details there. Also, keep in mind, we have, let's see here, keep in mind our calendar of events. Go to Yuhad events. Okay, and we've got an 8 p.m. thing here where let's talk Paul and covenants. That's Brother Sean. I might actually put a Lilith in here and a Lilith in here. So we'll see. I might actually fill those with another one of these too, since they are unfilled at the moment. And so all of you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this. It's a great discussion. There's a lot of very deep and meaty issues here. Please don't be offended by any of this. This is, like I say, eat the hay, spit out the straw. We have a unity and diversity principle. If there's something that you're gaining out of this, that's all the better in your knowledge of Messiah. Remember, this is just the Lilith theory. It's one of 3 main theories that tie together some very difficult themes throughout the Bible. So with all of that, I will say shalom, shalom to all of you. Bahit Raot. See you later.